Hello friends, welcome to this part of our program Cognitive Archaeology. Before continuing the rest of our previous part, I would have a review on what I told you about cognitive archaeology. As I told you, cognitive archaeology or archaeology of mind or a study of mind is a main branch of prehistoric archaeology that focuses on the evolution of the human mind. And as I mentioned in the previous parts. In fact, while and regardless of our mentioning that cognitive archaeology is a branch of prehistoric archaeology, but we will see that how it can be used for the study of contemporary human contemporary minds and contemporary technologies, artifacts, in fact. Um, I told you that cognitive archaeology is a field to study the evolution of mind. So that we have to obviously know about mind, and this is why archaeological studies from a cognitive perspective refers to the interdisciplinary and theoretical use of several sciences and disciplines such as cognitive science, genetics, anthropology, neurology, evolutionary biology, contemporary and evolutionary psychology, philosophy, and linguistics. I told you about the purposes of studying material culture in the context of, in fact, in the context of archaeology, which are the first one is how early cultures functioned and understood their surroundings. The second one is to understand the evolution of the human mind and culture. And as you probably found and will realize more later, there is a really, in fact, an interconnection, an interplay between human mind and culture, which I told you that culture, material culture, is a part of our environment, plus, in fact, time and space. And this is why we have another field as spatial archaeology. Uh, Also, cognitive archaeology tends to study the evolution of the cognitive and social skills of past and contemporary humans that are not the focus of various sciences such as contemporary psychology. In fact, cognitive archaeology focuses on the development of domain of specific cognitive abilities, including theory of mind, visual perception, language, numeracy, literacy, and any other concepts you may in fact be interested, which all are realized, in fact, which it is realized the evolution of each of these concepts throughout the time, throughout history. Also, you found that cognitive archaeology is divided two main groups of cognitive archaeology. The first one is evolutionary cognitive archaeology, or CEA, and the second one is ideal cognitive archaeology. And in this program, we will learn about the first one, evolutionary cognitive archaeology. However, if you are interested in ideal cognitive archaeology, you can, in fact, just Google it and know more about it. Then, by, in fact, study each of these, that in fact subfields, you will be able to find your interest, your exact subfield, in fact. Um, in this program, you will learn about evolutionary cognitive archaeology. However, I'm sure that you need a, a study in depth and in detail more and more. And this is, in fact, your task if you would be a real scholar or researcher in this field. Well, I will continue with uh, talking about evolutionary cognitive archaeology. ECA, or evolutionary cognitive archaeology, infers change in ancestral cognition, um, in ancestral cognition from the archaeological records, drawing on the, in fact, drawing on the, in fact, sorry, just please. Drawing on the disciplines like cognitive science, comparative cognition, paleoneurology, and experimental replication, you and you will be familiar exactly at this slide that why experimental replication is important in fact in the study of evolutionary cognitive archaeology. Um, in fact. Evolutionary cognitive archaeology examines the interplay and interconnection between human cognition and cultural evolution. It focuses on how cognitive abilities have shaped and been shaped by our evolutionary history. Um, this field integrates insights from archaeology, anthropology, psychology, and neuroscience to understand the development of human intelligence. The point that I would focus more about, on that is, in fact, the interaction between mind and material culture. Friends, the concepts and terms that I focus on them are really important in the context of evolutionary cognitive archaeology in particular and cognitive archaeology in general. So, for example, interaction between mind and material culture are really important, and this is exactly one of the foundation of cognitive archaeology, specifically evolutionary one. In fact, there are some key concepts in this regard. The first one is human cognitive abilities, such as problem solving, language, and indeed, as I told you in the previous slide, in fact, like the knowledge and the ability of language, numeracy, and literacy, and finally social interaction, all these cognitive abilities have evolved over millions of years. Research indicates that these abilities are linked to changes in brain structure. I repeat it, all the cognitive abilities are linked to changes in brain structure and function, particularly in the neurocortex of our brain, which is larger in humans than in other species, like, for example, primates. Uh, we have working memory. Working memory is a crucial aspect of cognitive function. In fact, working memory allows individuals to hold and manipulate information temporally. Theories suggest that working memory capacity, the capacity of working memory, reflects executive functions that are vital for complex tasks like language processing and problem solving. In fact, the process of language, the process of problem solving, knowing and learning numeracy, literature, and other cognitive abilities are all, in fact, terms and concepts that you can find them in psychology, specifically evolutionary psychology, in evolutionary biology, and other, in fact, neuroscience, cognitive science, and all fields that I remember. In fact, talked about them, and as in fact key concepts. I mean, so another one is that, in fact, comparative analysis. By comparing modern humans, in fact, modern human minds, with great apes and other primates, researchers identify unique aspects of human cognition, such as advanced theory of mind and symbolic thought, that distinguish us, our human, from our closest relatives. Another point is, in fact, implications for understanding human behavior. The study of evolutionary cognitive archaeology not only sheds light on how our ancestors taught and interacted, but also informs contemporary issues such as education, social behavior, and the development of technology. Understanding the roots of our cognition abilities and capabilities can help us appreciate the complexities of our, in fact, modern human life. And this is why I told you that, in fact, in fact, cognitive archaeology is not exactly a field which studies the prehistoric. Yeah, indeed. When we wanna study the modern human life, the modern human concepts, the modern human mind, and even the modern human brain and body, uh, we have to come back to the prehistory of our ancestors. So, but as you see now, we can understand that by using cognitive archaeology, depending on your interest, not only you can, in fact, the prehistory of our time, the prehistory of our ancestors, but also you are able to study the modern time, right? And also another point in this slide is that uh, evolutionary cognitive archaeology in general, and the first school of thought that I will talk about it soon. In fact, uh, still, and indeed, the second school of thought are focusing on the question, instead, in fact, instead of focusing on the question, what do artifacts mean, they emphasize on the question and finding the answer, in fact, the answer of this question of how do material culture mean. So between what and how is a huge difference, friends. So if you just Google it about both of them, you will access to a huge key resources on cognitive archaeology that explain why between these these questions is a huge difference. In fact, when we say, well, the interpretation of the motifs on potteries is a textbook example in this regard. How? Okay, I explain a little about it. When you ask what do artifacts mean, I'm sure that you've been faced to this question that is general, in fact, which in most of books and most of researchers, when they are doing a research, they are tending to ask, in fact, what do that specific material culture, for example, a pottery, a clay tablet, any other type of, in fact, artifact, material culture that you would like to study, or you name. In fact, we ask what do they mean. But cognitive archaeology focuses and emphasizes in changing, in fact, our question. So we have to change our mind to change, in fact, this question, that we have to ask how, ask, in fact, for material culture, how do they mean, not what do they mean, and why this is this happened. This is why in cognitive archaeology, exactly our purpose and our issue is that since we do not have any access to the ancient mind, so if we ask what do artifacts mean, in fact, we just have made some personal, in fact, scenarios. You know, when I'm sure that you, as an archaeologist, you have studied some articles or even books that, for example, say that, for example, the motif of a tree on a pottery means, for example, a meaning, a specific meaning, right? Or, for example, a square form means, for example, the earth, right? But this is wrong. This is wrong, and you will learn why this is wrong in more details. Okay, so just you have to know that in cognitive archaeology we ask how, not what. Okay, so, as I told you, motifs, interpretation of motifs on potteries is a textbook example, since when we ask what, it refers to some personal scenarios, personal interpretation that obviously are not correct, since we do not have any access to the ancient mind. So when we do not have any access to the ancient mind, how we can find that in fact specific motif, for example, or that specific written form means. Okay, uh, and as I told you, it seeks to find how interactions between humans and things occur from a cognitive perspective, and in the importance of materials or things or objects, material culture in the context of archaeology, from point of cognitive archaeology view, I would say in that importance that the cognitive archaeology or archaeology of mind can realize intelligent intelligent behavior through the study of material culture and interpret objects and their changes over time. So, cognitive archaeology believes that there is a type of intelligence and intelligent behavior into material culture. So we have two school of thoughts within the evolutionary cognitive archaeology. Just let me check if the record okay works well. Okay, we have two school of thoughts within ECA. The first one is the North American ECA school, which its pioneers are Professor Thomas Wynne and Professor Frederick Coolidge. Both are the professors of, in fact, anthropology and psychology in the University of Colorado. So the first school of thought in ECA tends to understand human cognitive evolution by artifactual records, by comparison of ancestral tools with those of contemporary species or primates. And again, this is another in fact, emphasize on this point that I mentioned twice or three times, that cognitive archaeology is not just a study of prehistoric time, but historic and even contemporary minds and technologies and brains, in fact. So, another one is analyzing change or evolution in a form like stone tools over millions of years, which we had, in fact, a leader a survey on the evolution of, in fact, on the cognitive evolution of making those, in fact, species that made Archaean, sorry, and all the one tools throughout millions of years, which how much is their complexity, and how were what were in fact the significances of cognition of those who made those stone tools, in fact. And another one is that the North American school of thought tends to interpret the change or evolution in terms of its cognitive significance by different theories and disciplines. What about the second school of thought within ECA? The second one, names as the North British. Its pioneers are Professor Colin Renfrew and Professor Lambros Malaforis, that I'm really inspired by them. Mm, in this case, more than in fact the first school of thought, it asks how things mean instead of what things mean. Indeed, we have this question, and this emphasized in two schools, but this is much more of importance in this school, since these pioneers, in fact, take a philosophical approach to the study of ancient mind, and this is the main difference between these two schools. At this case, in the first school of thought, we had, in fact, analyzing of artifactual records or material culture and comparison. In fact, and this is in fact more, um, in fact, a comparison, more than in fact description. But and at this case, the second one, since we use and we take a philosophical approach to the study of ancient mind, or the study of in fact material culture, this is more descriptive and indeed much more, in fact, abstract point of view. Okay, it also tries to draw on concepts from the philosophy of mind. So if you Google the philosophy of mind, you will be faced to a huge theory and concepts and specific terms, and indeed ecological psychology to examine the role of material culture in human cognition. So there is a much more specific focus on the role of material culture in human cognition in this school. However, again, the importance of material culture in both two school of thoughts, are obvious. And also, these pioneers, Professor Malaforis and Ruinforo, coined the term neuroarchaeology. So again, if you Google neuroarchaeology, you will find these pioneers and their books and their research, to answer this question, in fact, how humans think through material structures or material culture, like the process of pottery making, for example, or for example, the process of making language or making numeracy throughout history, or prehistory, indeed history, I mean. Uh, okay, For a better understanding, I would okay. Just let me if okay. Okay, let's have a look on the first research of Thomas Wien, Professor Thomas Wien, which has fulfilled. In fact, it's the name of the title of this research is "The Intelligence of Later Archean Hominids," which was fulfilled in 1979 in the Journal of Man to realize what ECA school, in fact, the first school of thought refers to. Well, Thomas Wien employs Piagetian genetic epistemology to analyze and characterize the cognitive abilities of later Archean hominids, particularly focusing on their tool-making skills and social behaviors. Okay, so the framework he used was the Piagetian theory. Also, Wien's work remains influential in contemporary archaeological studies, continuing to be cited for its innovative approach to understand early human cognition through archaeological evidence or archaeological material culture indeed. His application of psychological theory to archaeology has opened new avenues for research in cognitive evolution. And what about its cognitive framework? Well, as I told you, Thomas Wien used the Piagetian theory. He utilized concepts from Jean Piaget's theories of cognitive development to assess the intelligence of Archean hominids. He argues that understanding their cognitive capabilities requires examining how they interacted with their environment and created tools. Another point is tool making and intelligence. This term, in fact, refers to complexity of tools. So when we say tool making and its intelligence, it refers to the complexity, the amount of complexity of that specific tool. Well, this article highlights the sophistication of Archelian tools in comparison, for example, older ones, and suggests that the complexity involved in their production indicates advanced cognitive processes. Thomas Wien posits that the ability to plan, execute, and refine tool-making techniques reflects higher levels of intelligence than previously attributed to early hominids. And as you remember, I had a slide that there was a little comparison between the amount of, in fact, species which who made, in fact, older one stone tools, and in comparison with, in fact, who made Archelian ones, right? Another one is social structures or social cognition. Thomas Wynne discusses at this research that the implications of tool making for social interaction among hominids. He suggests that the collaborative nature of tool use may have fostered social bonds and communication, which are critical components of cognitive evolution. So, this is the point that when I studied about it the first time, it was really wondering for me. May you have not thought about that there is a in fact collaborative nature in the tools production and tool usage. um, I'm really interested in this in fact, since we cannot imagine that uh, there is in fact the collaborative nature of making tools or tool making production and tool use foster fosters in fact social bonds and communication, right? And what about evolutionary implications? In fact, the article contributes to discussions on how cognitive abilities evolved in hominids. Thomas Wynne argues that the advancements or enhancements in tool technology are indicative of broader cognitive developments that may have played a role in the survival and adaptation of later Archean hominids. And indeed, since in fact, um, as I told you, since this cognitive evolution, this in fact complexity of evolution, cognition, and mind has been continued to now as us as contemporary humans. So, in fact, this type of intelligence that is in the in fact material culture from the advent of in fact primates and then different species till now. So the essence of material culture is a continued relevance. So if, for example, we have a cell phone now, this is in fact the outcome of those tools that our ancestors made a time, right? So this is why we say it is a continued relevance, or there is a continued relevance in our um, ancestor between our ancestors from the prehistory till now. And for this part, I would finish this part for introducing you some really basic but really important sources. I suggest you to start reading these books, specifically this one, Cognitive Archaeology and Human Evolution by Frederick Coolidge and Thomas Wynne, and also this one, Handbook of Cognitive Archaeology or Psychology in Prehistory. These books are really important if you really would like to know and start your way as an in fact as a cognitive archaeologist. So for understanding more about cognitive archaeology and its theories, I suggest you, while you in fact are familiarizing with this term in this program, in this specific program, I suggest you that along that, start to study specifically this book or this or another ones that I will introduce to you. So study this one to find your, in fact, interest in choosing the type of material culture, in choosing the in fact, the specific theory, and so on.